Welcome back to the Canadian Ruck. This is Jamie Gray. This pod, we've got a treat. We've got three Canadian legends of the game, Brett Beukeboom, Evan Olmstead, both have been on in the past, and Matt Evans. Matt's new to us, and we're actually going to have a solo chat with Matt here this weekend, so that pod of his will be ready probably within a couple of weeks. So just a quick plug before we get started. You know that we're all on the social media. We're on the Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can just do a quick search for us looking for the Canadian Ruck. If you want to contact me via email, it's thecanadianruck@gmail.com. So it's great when you follow on social media, but the most important thing is that you're subscribing, following, listening, but passing these messages out, pushing these messages out of our great Canadian rugby players, because it's important that they get the respect they deserve. We're on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Google Podcasts, Castbox, and obviously on YouTube where you can watch. And if you need to know where to go, always just check out our website, thecanadianruck.weebly.com. It's got a list of all our past content, future guests, etc., even some merch like this beautiful hat I'm wearing if you're on YouTube right now. All right, what's going on in the rugby world right now? There's been a few things this week. Let's take a quick look first, the rugby landscape of the Lions Tour. All right, I've shared my feelings about this. I love the Lions Tour, but I also have some reservations around it for a variety of reasons, and they're on past pods. I'm not going to get into that. But right now, there's some struggles happening between the Lions and the Premiership Rugby. They're struggling to come to an agreement on player release and availability. Gats is looking to name his squad within the next couple of weeks, and the Lions are actually supposed to be playing on June 26, VG Pan, as a Lions Tour tune-up. Gats has been very adamant that those missing tryouts will more than likely miss out on being selected because the Lions camp clashes with the Premiership playoffs. Obviously, clubs want their best players available for playoffs. I can't blame them. And they're bucking a little bit at Gats' requests. Am I missing something here? Shouldn't Gats, who's watched all the Six Nations games, a lot of them in person, and probably most of those Premiership games, shouldn't he know by now who's probably going to be on the roster? Does he really need to strong arm the Premiership clubs to serve at the whims of the Lions? I imagine he probably knows who he wants to take. I mean, if I'm coaching and I'm watching that many games, I know who I want. And I dare say, if he doesn't, he'd get more from watching a playoff game than at day camps. Like, seriously. You're going to bring them to some day camps, run them through the paces, or you can watch them actually in live action to see how they fare. Oh, just my 2 cents. Maybe I'm off. Maybe it's because I've never coached internationally, but I think you're going to get more out of watching games than just specific camps. I think he's probably got a good sense as to who he wants. It might be just some outliers that he's concerned with. Either way, there's some issues going on over there that needs to be straightened out. Here's a good heartwarming story. Dane Halep-Penny, a bit of a concussion comeback, hopefully. You all know my struggles with concussion. I'm, currently working through my 10th and still having a rough time, but I'm progressing slightly. So Halep-Penny is looking to return after 6 months off due to a concussion. So the 32-year-old, he's saying he's pretty confident he can return, but he hasn't played since Halloween when Australia played the All Blacks at the Bledisloe Cup. But saying that, he's been back to full contact practices for the past 3 weeks. And he recently said in a statement, "I've been pleasantly surprised with the recovery. We just took sort of a cautious route. Rugby Australia asked me to do several weeks of full training and contact. I thought I may be ready this week, but they put the brakes on and said, let's just get a couple of weeks of full contact now. It's obviously to replicate a game. The next step is to play. So obviously I'll cross my fingers that we can get a win tomorrow and we can play a final so I can try and get back." I think that's pretty awesome. He also went on to say if medical advice is that he should retire, he said that he would do that. So he's really taking cautions about himself. I, along with many of you, know full well the consequences of concussions and not being fully healed when coming back to play. But it sounds like Halep-Penny and Rugby Australia are looking out for him. Good on them both, and hopefully he's back playing soon. More locally, lots of MLR this action. This is an exciting weekend. Games, a host of games on Saturday and Sunday. Let's take a look. Saturday's match. Our first one is Rugby ATL. They're hosting NOLA. Following up that one is a San Diego Legion, and they're on the road. They're in LA to face the Giltinis, who just keep revamping their whole lineup. They're bringing in new players. And then Utah Warriors are hosting the Houston SaberCats. On Sunday, there's 3 more matches. Your Toronto Arrows are in the Big Apple to face Rugby United New York. The New England Free Jacks are in Washington to face off with Old Glory DC. And the last match of the weekend sees the Seattle Seawolves on the road to face the Gilgronis in Austin. Speaking of the Seawolves, they just had a doozy of a coach. I just saw this a few minutes before I started recording. Former Irish hooker Rory Best has just signed on with Seattle as a technical coach. You may remember Best as a standard hooker for Ireland, having just retired in 2019 after the Rugby World Cup in Japan. He's got 124 caps, 2 tours with the Lions, so he's bringing a great deal of experience to DJ Sears Drew and the Seawolves. Best of luck, Rory. Best of luck, Seawolves. That's a great addition. There's some excellent rugby on tap this weekend. Along with the MLR, I just went through those 6 matches. There's going to be some great games, but also there's some great Super Rugby AU, Super Rugby Aotearoa, plus a full slate of the Women's Six Nation. It's going to be another great weekend for some beautiful rugby. Make sure you cue the PVR, get online, whatever you have to do, but make sure you're watching some of those games. More locally here in New Brunswick, we're getting geared up in southern New Brunswick with the U18 League. This is our first attempt at it. Troy Skippy Dixon of the St. John Trojans, he's been putting in tons of hours and work to get this off of ground. So my hat's off to you, Troy, for all you've been doing. You've been running some contact camps. You've been making, organizing players from schools to make sure that they can get invested in this. It's been awesome. So as of now, with COVID staying the way it is here, we have 3 tourney dates set up. And this year we're going to be playing 10s because of COVID. So instead of our regular 15s rugby, we're the coaches and players are learning this new game of 10. So if anybody has any great 10s drills, I'd love for you to share them with me. So our tournament dates are May 8th, May 15th, May 29th. And that will take us those 3 weeks, and then all graduation festivities will kick off after that. My team's been doing contact for the past week and a half, doing quite well. We've got a roster of about 19 players this year. Numbers are down because of COVID. Some were very hesitant to sign up, but we've been doing some contact. We have, I think, 6 players that have played before, and we've got 12 or 13 that are new to the game. Check us out on Instagram or Twitter. Look for Ross St. Otherwood School Varsity Boys Rugby. You can see some images. You can see some videos of what we're doing. Lots of good action shots and videos from training. Trying to incorporate some fun while we're learning the basics of rucking, tackling, all that contact. I don't know about you, but I know I'm excited again to coach. It was a rough last year. It had a huge impact on rugby in this area, and we're all looking very forward to getting back on the pitch for some meaningful, fun games. Looking for a cup of coffee? Well, you can take a look right there. My cup, the Canadian Ruck, printed off beautifully by my buddy Coyne at ESL Art Supplies, is holding a nice cup of East Coast Roast Coffee. And East Coast Roast Coffee is an independent micro coffee roaster here in St. John, New Brunswick. What microbreweries are to beer, East Coast Roasts is to coffee. And I love my microbrewery beer, and the same goes for this coffee. They source from independent farmers and co-ops all over the world and roast in small batches to bring something interesting to the local coffee scene. If you're into a really fresh coffee, you can head over to their site at eastcoastroasts.ca. Follow them on social media. They're on Twitter, they're on Instagram, or pick up beans from Jeremiah's, the Paris Crew, the Art Warehouse, or Woodchucks in St. John. Get your cup now and enjoy a beautiful tasting coffee. Coming up now, though, Evan Olmstead, Brett Beukeboom, and Matt Evans. All right, welcome back to the Canadian Ruck. We've got Evan Olmstead, Brett Beukeboom returning, and new to the pod is Matt Evans. Welcome, boys. It's going to be a lot of fun talking some rugby.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
We're all naturals, obviously. Good.
All right, let's jump right in. Lions Tour is coming up. It's still being hosted in South Africa, which is, in my mind, a little surprising. I enjoy it. But I also have issues with the Lions Tour because it takes away from a lot of other rugby playing nations. What would you guys' thoughts be on like a North American style one where you'd have Canada, US, Argentina, maybe Uruguay combining and trying the same thing like every 4 years going on tour? What do you guys think of that? Let's start with Brett.
Yeah, well, that's a great idea. I know, well, with the Lions, there's a lot of history behind it, and it's a real honor to be picked to that squad. As you could tell if you've seen any of the documentaries or if you've watched any of the test matches, there's a lot of passion behind that. So it's a great idea. Do I see 4 or 5 unions coming together and agreeing to something like that? That'd be the toughest task of putting that idea into implementation. But yeah, it's a great idea.
What about you, Evan?
Yeah, it'd be a really good idea. I think it would be tough, I guess, doing North and South America just because of the language barrier. My Spanish is not too hot. I imagine most of the Canadian guys would be the same.
Oh,
but no,
there, Evan.
What's that?
You just assume you'd be in a team there.
Obviously, back yourself. Yeah, if it would be great if we could get together, get something like that. But yeah, it would be good. I mean, if it created a bit more attention and sort of brought some sort of atmosphere to the games and gave us another little platform to promote the sport here in North America, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think that's what my thought would be. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, obviously it's a long-standing tradition, the old Lions tours from, what they were about and everything like that, back when travel wasn't so easy and it was a long old trip. They used to go down for like 3-4 months together and stuff. But I think the principle of what we're discussing is like the limelight being shifted to that and taken away from other rugby, then to present a different opportunity for North and South American players and fans to buy into. Yeah, definitely great idea. It's anything that can promote or encourage engagement with the game is going to benefit everybody. So, and if there's more rugby to watch, it's better for everybody too. So,
That's kind of, I guess, what my thought was. When the Lions tour happened, Canada was supposed to host England, but England would have been sending, basically a B-side over because their top players would be with the Lions tour. So are we, as a country, really getting that opportunity to play against the best to improve? And the other thing was, as all three of you alluded to, like just opening a different platform up for people to see some high-end rugby being played at the best with the best.
You never know. England might not get too many players in that Lions tour, so it could be a pretty full-strength England side.
That's
never
fair.
know. I think Mevs rolling his eyes down there.
Yeah, I agree with you, mate. I agree with you.
They did struggle.
Even if we played against a second string English team, I think that's still a great learning opportunity for us. Like those guys, if you took out say 20 of the regular England squad who were going to say 20 guys go on the tour, I don't know how many they take in general, but there's usually quite a good England contingent. That's still when they've got like 40 guys in that England elite player squad or whatever. So it's going to be like some of the best players in the Premiership anyway. So I don't think we would find the games too easy by any stretch if they sent that squad over. And it'd be a good opportunity for them as well to get some new caps in there and see how they go.
Yeah, no, that's fair. They do have they have a lot of rugby resources for sure. But it kind of ties in with the second one, which is you guys probably all know the World Rugby started that women's 15 event. Is there something like that could work on the men's side? I mean, there's the Six Nations, there's a rugby championship. There used to be, things like the Churchill Cup. Is there something else that could get the Americas involved a little bit more in some type of centralized international play?
For me, it's nice you mentioned Churchill Cup there, because if you look back, Canadian rugby, when we were engaged in like the IRB a lot more, the way that the test matches worked, when I get capped, 2008, and that year we played I think we played 9 test matches and then 5 Churchill Cup games. So time together was huge. And you look at the experience that we've all shared together as entering at different times in the cycle of Canadian rugby. It seems like now the opportunity to get together is few and far between, really. So having like an inline program like the women have established now, would that provide more opportunity for international rugby for guys or just regular rugby? Yeah, that would be a great benefit. And something like the Churchill Cup was a huge loss to Canadian rugby, even though, sometimes you're playing A fixtures, but hey, we played some great Argentinian sides, some great Saxon sides, French side, you had Maxime Moz playing, Dusautois, guys like that at that time. And we beat them down in Denver there. And that was a huge point of, sort of a footing in what we were building as a squad at that time. It changes with everything as you move forward, but to have the ability to play regularly like that and have something in line like they're presenting now would be hugely beneficial for Canada.
What about you guys, Evan?
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with the proposals that they're going to have sort of 15 teams, women's teams, all playing at sort of like almost like a World Cup type thing, is it? Like a round robin, or?
Yeah, in a sense. So they're gonna have 3 different tiers, and they're going to be going to one central venue to play against teams that are ranked close to them, and it's going to be every year except for a World Cup year. So it's a chance to play, Canada, who's ranked 3rd right now on the women's side. It's a chance for them to play those top 5 nations annually. And if they're faltering, maybe they get bumped down to tier 2 or whatnot. But it's just, I think they're trying to create more venue for women to play centrally, so it doesn't cost as much and get a chance to play against good level competition as well. So.
Yeah, well, that does sound like a good idea, and it would be great if we could have more games against teams that are similarly ranked, because it seems since I've been involved with the program, we haven't really played that many games against teams that are actually ranked closely to us. Like we get a couple, but we're usually either playing, we played Ireland, or we played Japan, who are ranked like top 10 or whatever they are now, Scotland. And then, even guys like Romania and Georgia, they're all ranked quite well above us at the minute. So if there was some sort of system to get like some competitive games to then you could build your depth without worrying that if you try out some new players against Scotland, you're worried it could be 100 points. Like, it gives you that flexibility to play against the teams that are ranked similar to you. I think that's a great idea. The practical challenge would be that the men's game is like largely professional everywhere in the world, and they have different seasons. Whereas the women's, I think most of the professional rugby is either in New Zealand or in England. So they really only have 2 countries to deal with. Whereas, we've got the French system, English system, Pro 14, Rainbow Cup, whatever they're going to call it now, and then the Southern Hemisphere, Japan. It would be a tough job to try and coordinate that.
Yeah, there's no.
It'd be great if they did.
There's no global calendar on the men's side, right? It makes it that much more difficult. Yeah. Any thoughts there, Brett?
Yeah, just building on what Matt and Evan said, the more rugby Canada is exposed to and they're able to play at a test level, the better exposure, the better team cohesion would be. But again, as both these guys alluded to, it'd be a tough task getting all these rugby playing nations on the same page and agreeing to the same schedule, because again, it's dominated by professional leagues, and these tier 1 nations have tournaments in place that create a lot of revenue for them. So it'd be a tough task to coordinate everything.
Yeah, it'd be a shame if it did go through and Canada was missing the likes of Evan Olmstead or Tyler Ardron because they're over in Europe playing, and it would, I think, diminish Canadian rugby that much more. I don't know. It's just kind of something I thought, like, this would be a really cool idea if it could happen, if there could be a global calendar. And I don't think that is anywhere on the horizon. I know World Rugby's talked about it a bunch, but I don't know if it can actually happen. So being a multi-sport athlete is something that I fully endorse. I've always argued that rugby is a great sport, especially in Canada or United States, where oftentimes it's not your primary sport, but it'd be, secondary off of hockey or basketball or football. Because of its physical nature, the toughness involved, emphasis on foot and handwork and camaraderie. What sports did you guys play growing up, and how did those sports help you reach the top of your game professionally and internationally with the rugby team, with Rugby Canada?
Go on, Brett.
So yeah, growing up, basically every sport that I could play, I played. Firstly, that was hockey, basketball, volleyball, golf as well, and it's just there's a lot of transition, there's a lot of crossover between the certain skills and aspects of all sports. So the more sports you play, it gives you the greater ability to be able to adapt and create a broader skill set within the rugby sense, because you see, and a lot of NCAA recruiters say this, they don't want they don't want to recruit players that just play one sport. They want them to have to be multidimensional. They want them to really excel and be able to play different sports, because it can mitigate it can mitigate injuries. It can increase spatial awareness and different skill sets involved with one particular sport that you want to pursue.
Yeah, that's a really good point. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. My personal path was a bit different. What I did was I played loads of sports and figured out I was pretty crap at most of them. So then I had to focus on rugby because I knew what was going on. So I left the UK and moved to England when I was left England and moved to Canada when I was 11. So I never got exposure to hockey. I got on the ice, but it was behind one of those sort of like cone-shaped things that you used to push along. So that was good.
Did you evolve past that?
Yeah, I never did. No, but floor hockey was more my game. I enjoyed that. But yeah, my exposure to North American sports was just a love for the spectator side of it. Really, we used to go and watch the Cowichan Valley Capitals, teams like that, and on like Friday nights and stuff. I loved hockey. I love watching basketball. I tried to play at high school. I had a couple panic attacks and stuff like that playing it when I actually had to play. But I was all about the training and being involved with it because it was fun. And that was the biggest thing. I've always enjoyed sport for the fun side of it. And I think that's why you play when you're younger. And these multi-sport athletes, if you're enjoying doing something, whether it's tennis, badminton, to hockey, to rugby, rowing, whatever you want to do, and it's something that brings you joy, push on with that. And I think that, when you start heading into this elite stuff, it could have an influence on hand-eye coordination, reaction time, game sense, all that sort of stuff. But the initial thing's got to be from a fun perspective, and that's what will keep you involved in something. You see it pretty quick in rugby, guys professionally, guys who get involved and their feeling of enjoyment falls out of it, and it's a tough thing to do, so I'd encourage everybody to try something. You might be good at lots and enjoy everything, or you might be bad at quite a few and end up really enjoying one. So
That's good points there.
Yeah. For me, I was a bit the same. Like I played a lot of different sports as a youngster. Pretty much, I tried cricket. I wasn't very good at cricket. Didn't have the patience for golf, but I was really big into. I played soccer, then switched over to rugby. Those seasons were at the same time, and then with basketball and rugby up until pretty much I left high school. And for me, I agree with what Beuks was saying, especially about the coordination and the other skills. But I firmly believe that if I'd stopped playing basketball earlier, I would have been a much better rugby player at a younger age. Just because for me, the main thing holding me back around sort of those really important years in the Australian system of like 15 to 18 was my weight. And I was playing like 3 teams of basketball a week and 3 teams of rugby a week. So I was the fittest guy in the world, but I was a string bean and I couldn't put a kilo on to save myself. And I was stuck at like 80 kilos, 85 kilos even in grade 12. I was the same height I am now, but I was 85 kilos and I was competing against guys who were 110 kilos. And, I had good awareness and good ball skills and whatever, but my dominance in the contact area was just nowhere because they had 30 kilos on me. So for me, I kind of think that, you should play heaps of sports while you're young and have as much fun as you can, but it depends on each specific sport when they start getting serious. But for rugby in Australia, it was about 15 is when they started to like really nail down academies. And that's when the size thing was really starting to become more evident, that some guys were getting bigger and stronger. And those guys naturally were picked, even though I would say I was a better player in terms of skills and whatever, but they would say, oh, look at that monster. Like we can teach him skills. We can't teach you big. So for me, I'd say like if I'd stopped playing basketball at about 15 as opposed to 18, that would have helped me because I was there or thereabouts. I was right on the edge of selection, and the guys that they picked they were definitely not better. They were definitely bigger though. And I think if I could have just stopped running so much on, like, stopped doing 2 different training sessions, a basketball training and a rugby training each night of the week, and then 3 games on the weekend or whatever, that would have helped me. But that's just me, and that's kind of my thought. So if I had kids and they were going through the same sort of situation, that's what I'd advise. I'd be like, play everything, see what you like. I'd definitely try and keep them away from rugby as well, though. Just get them into golf or tennis, low impact, good salaries, and yeah.
It sounds like with
once
you,
it's time to focus, then focus.
It sounds
if
like
you're serious about it.
With you, it was more basketball and rugby kind of interfered with each other because it was happening at the same time. If they had been in different seasons, it might have been a different story.
Well, they were in different seasons. Like, there was some basketball that was kind of running. Some basketball ran all year round. Obviously, being indoors, you can do that. But it was mostly a summer sport in Australia, and rugby was a winter sport. But it's just like, you go, you have your rugby season, and then it's time, like, you have the summer to bulk up and add weight and, try and, hit the gym. And so you're hitting the gym as much as you want. But if you're just burning so many calories on a daily basis, and, your knowledge of nutrition is not all that great back then. So, to be putting, you don't know that much about calories. Maybe the kids these days do know all that stuff. I'd probably say they probably wouldn't. Although the internet, Google's way better than it was. Internet and everything is way better now. But, to put in that many calories and to actually gain weight while doing that much activity, it's going to be pretty difficult. And so if you just, especially in the forwards, maybe if I was a winger, it wouldn't have mattered. But, being in the positions I am, I needed if I had an extra 10 kilos in my grade 12, like, my professional trajectory could have kicked off a lot earlier, I think. But that's hindsight,
maybe so.
Isn't it? And just comparing myself to guys who are in the same teams of similar ability, that we were, going in the same direction most of the way, and then, they went up this way, and then I kind of went sideways this way. We're all got there eventually, but could have happened a bit quicker.
That's fair. That is fair. All right. So we've got a few questions here that are just kind of like one-offs, just very simple answers. And we'll start with Matt, then we'll go to Brett, and then we'll go to Evan. So the first one is, Matt, what would be your favorite venue to play? So if it was a match for world domination, where would you want to play that game?
Millennium Stadium.
Millennium Stadium?
Yeah, we played there a couple times. It was brilliant.
Good shout. Brett, what about you?
I'm gonna go. I agree. Millennium Stadium was a great venue, but I'm gonna go to my Cornish Pirates roots. I'm saying Mene. We pack the Mene at capacity crowd and get naughty boys corner bumping. I think the home team there is not losing.
You beat Saracens, didn't you?
Yeah, that's what happens. Saracens came down to the Mene and they didn't like it, right, Matt?
Yeah, they got rid of you and me, mate, and then all of a sudden it's just beating European champs.
What about you, Evan?
For me, Eden Park.
Eden Park, that's a good one too. All right, so next one. What's your favorite country that you've played in, like to visit, to play in type thing? Same Matt, Brett, Evan, same order there.
Irish are pretty good hosts. I enjoyed playing there. Thomond Park. Good night out afterwards.
Good.
Yeah.
Ireland, good.
Yeah, I'd probably have to say Ireland as well. We played at Aviva Stadium. One was at 2016. It was a great atmosphere, and the city they were great hosts there.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Two Irish.
Yeah, I agree with Brett, but since he's already said it, frees me up to say France, just because of the crazy atmosphere at the games, the abuse, the bans, the smell of cigarette smoke in the stadium that just brings you back to a bit of a bygone time.
It's still allowed to smoke in the stadium there?
Oh, I'm not allowed to, but people just do.
All right, so this is a listener question. So a guy sent me this from Twitter's CC Payne. He wants to know who was a club player that you played with that you think could have played it to the next level, like could have made international, could have made Canada if they had have, stuck with it or had a different opportunity. Anybody come to your mind that you played with when you were younger that could have actually went further than they did? I'll give you a second to think on that one because I didn't email that one to you beforehand.
One of the most talented guys I ever played with, who skill set, was a guy called Peter Joel, and he played at SMU, and is like a crazy good golfer and stuff now. But I always remember, like, he used to play. Nate Hirayama would know him really well as well, but he was a fantastic ball player, and somebody who had the exposure to playing a lot more rugby with opportunity, whereas he chose education. I think he went over to UBC, maybe something like that. I might get that wrong. Get a message about that later. But they, he's a guy who always, in the BC high school games and stuff like that, he was always somebody who stood out. But yeah, Peter Joel.
All right, Brett, what about you?
Yeah, well, just thinking about some local guys that I played with or grew up with in Lindsay and played on representative teams as well. Two names that come to mind is Jeremy McCarty. He had he chose to go the hockey route and played some junior A, and he had some great potential. Then there's another guy, Nathan Reeves. He played the Canada under 17s and Lindsay and Ontario together. He was another guy with great potential, but they chose different paths in their careers, and I'm sure they're enjoying just as much success outside of rugby.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How about you, Evan?
Yeah. And I got two guys who I grew up with in Australia. The first one was a number 8 called Luke Rissman, and he was like he made the Australian schoolboys, as a 17-year-old, which was basically a year younger than everyone else. And he was really good, and I'm not sure sort of what happened to him, if he just kind of lost interest or whatever, but we played together a little bit of like under 20s rugby in Australia, and then he kind of just sort of stopped playing seriously, just got a job and played for fun after that. Another guy we also went to my high school was Eric Moss, and he was just like he was a 12. He should have really changed into a 9 because he was just really, really small. But he was he was like one of the bravest defenders and just a skillful player. But I remember as a youngster, like a giant prop took a quick tap, and it would have been about 110 kegs to 70 maybe. Like he looked like Gio Aplon, little South African winger. And he just picked up this guy, drove him back, and then these days would be a red card for a spear tackle, but then dumped him on his head. And I just thought, man, this guy, like, to be able to pick that guy up and straight on tackle, and he still plays club rugby in Sydney, and he's a good player, but maybe if he took a few different twists and turns or whatever throughout his career, maybe it could have gone different.
Oh, good. There's some good names there. It sounds like you guys held those guys to high regards. I like that. All right, we're gonna do our quick fire section now. So Evan and Brett's kind of gone through these before, so the questions are a little bit different. And when you answer, you have to answer one of you three, or if you really want, you can throw Matt Beukeboom under the bus because he failed to show up. He's playing COD right now. So let's jump right in here. So of the three of you, who has the best nickname?
Bukaki.
That's not what it stands for.
That's not a very G-rated answer.
I'd say that one wins. All right.
Yeah.
Of all of you, who has the most skill?
Mevs.
Oh yeah,
Mevs.
Please, you got 2 second rows here.
Yeah, but you didn't even hesitate.
Because I know they wouldn't have said it.
No, definitely Mevs. He's got caps at. He's played 10. He's played all over the back.
He can actually kick, and so just even if our passing skills were as good, which they're not, he can kick, so he wins.
Fair enough. All right, who's going to stop a 2v1?
Probably Mevs again.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, second.
Although he was the most yellow carded player in the championship for stopping 2v1 by slapdowns for a while.
I was actually, yeah.
Does that count? I don't know.
Well, I don't know. Beuks would be pretty handy. He was a traveling reserve for the Canadian Sevens team, non-traveling reserve. So
one injury away from going. One injury away. Just need one more guy to get hurt.
To be fair, I actually reckon Matt Beukeboom might be all right because I played against him here. He's very fast. He's surprisingly fast for a big guy. So he might be able to chase the guy down.
Okay.
Maybe.
Of all of you, who is the best tackler?
Beuks. Mr. Consistent. I
Mr.
get the
Consistent?
Cornish Pirates stats up.
You going to take that, Brett?
Yeah, Evan would be good too. Like
Evan's got some highlight shots. Evan's an aggressive guy. He's steady Eddie down at the bottom right of my screen here.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Of the three, I think I know
we're
this.
pretty close.
I think I know the answer. But of the three of you, who would be the first to get a card in a match?
Evan.
Me.
yeah.
I'd say that too. All right. This is probably the same answer. Who's the dirtiest player of all of you?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm dirty. Like
you loved in France, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. How many
I did
per game down there?
No, yeah, see, I don't do anything like that, but yeah. Well, I guess I did almost break the Biarritz record for the fastest suspension upon arrival at the ground. You get a suspension for 3 yellow cards in the season, and I got that in about 5 games. So it wasn't dirty, but yeah,
Wasn't clean.
It wasn't defended 2-on-1.
These two are very clean. So
All right. Who gets in trouble with the coach more?
Evan.
maybe. I don't really get in trouble with the coach. I did. Maybe.
His first tour with Canada, he was late for everything.
Yeah.
I was like,
I got assigned as his roommate, so he would be on time.
Roommates.
I had to room with him for an entire tour. An entire tour, so he would be on time for stuff.
That's a lot of pressure on you, Matt.
That was like one time, though. It was like one time, then it was a big deal got made of it.
That was a 8-week World Cup that we were at. Yeah.
It was over 3 months, and he was late for everything.
All right, out of all of you, who's the
One
fittest?
time.
Who's the fittest?
Mevs, I'd say.
Mevs again, yeah, Mevs.
Carrying a little less timber than those guys, though.
Well, and at the minute, Mevs is doing a charity run as well. So how many kilometers are you running a day for that charity run, Mevs?
10 a day at the moment for 30 days. So
Jesus.
I don't think I've run 10 in my
That's got
lifetime.
sore back written all over it.
Yeah,
I'm going all right. I ran a PB today. Did 44 minutes this morning.
good for you.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
But like I said, it's a little easier. I'm a little closer to the ground and carrying. If anybody's ever seen my legs, they're not much bigger than us. They're all right.
So what's
Built
the
for endurance.
Mine's
the
pretty
charity you're
close at
running
the
for?
moment.
I'm running for Sport Cornwall Foundation, which is a charity that invests in community sport to help with a range of things from junior community football, rugby venues to helping with mental health and people who are trying to reignite their life, really to get back into work by using sport as a channel to promote confidence and a healthier lifestyle, really.
So how would somebody make a donation?
If you go to the Cornish Pirates site, cornish-pirates.com, there's a Just Giving page on there. And yeah, anybody who wants to have a quick read about it and maybe if they got a couple bucks spare, it would be hugely appreciated. It's a great county we live in here. Beuks spends a lot of time here.
Canadian money? Do they accept Canadian money or what?
I'm sure they do. Otherwise, Beuks has got a pretty hefty bank account over here still, so I'm sure he'll do a trade exchange for some of them.
That's a lot.
All right, who's the best at yoga?
Not me. I don't think, not you either, Brett.
Matt looks like he's going to
Matt Beukeboom?
Matt Beukeboom, probably, because he spends a lot of time in dark, warm places, I guess, like playing COD, maybe stretching a bit then as well, who knows?
He's the younger, so he'll be the most flexible.
Activity other than rugby and Call of Duty. But yeah, we'll give it to Matt.
Yeah.
Who's got the best taste in music?
Beuks is pretty good, but Evs, you're pretty eclectic, aren't you? You like a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I like it. I like a bit of everything. I don't know. Yeah, you're the guy to go to on country music. That's for sure. Aren't you, Brett?
Yeah. Beuks and I lived together for quite a long time, and we didn't stray too much from country radio. I think Evs would be probably considered a bit more diverse.
Good word, diverse.
Diverse. All right, who's the best cook?
I'm not sure.
Well,
You guys live together.
judging by Evan's size right now and living in France, probably him.
Melinda.
There we go.
My
That's fair.
girlfriend.
All right, I think I know the answer.
It's just beer and inactivity. It's very, very simple formula.
I think I know the answer to this one because you kind of already alluded to it. But who's the worst roommate on a road trip?
Yeah, be Evan Olmstead.
Evan Olmstead.
Oh, do you know what, Ev? I'm going to be kind to you. You're not the worst roommate. It's just, it's just the situation we found ourselves in where I was your sort of carer for those 3 months. So that's probably tainted my view. You weren't actually bad. You didn't snore. You weren't overly messy, to be honest. You were pretty reluctant to put clothes on when you were lounging, but apart from that, yeah.
I noticed that when I've been roommates with him. You know, it's a lot of time is spent in his birthday suit.
It's got to be comfortable in your body, comfortable in your own skin.
All right, of the three of you or four of you, who gets in trouble at the pub more?
Matt.
I don't know.
Matt.
Yeah. He just messaged actually.
Because he's too young, like just doesn't know how to handle himself.
Oh, he just gets himself in some situations, I guess you can say. Yeah.
You didn't teach him very well.
He's not the greatest student.
All right, last quick fire. Somebody's hosting a house party. Cops come to break it up. Who's getting away and who's getting picked up by the police?
Matt Beukeboom's getting picked up by the cops because he's the drunkest girl at the party.
Yeah, Matt will get picked up.
The three of you getting away?
Yeah, we'd be getting
away. Back myself.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks very much. Those are fun. I got a couple left, and then we'll sign off here. So, as most of you probably know, in Canada and North America, there's a stigma that rugby can be brutally violent and a dangerous sport. What would you guys tell parents that were concerned about letting their son or daughter play, especially if it would affect what they think is their chance for their son or daughter achieving a higher level at a different sport? Like, at the school I coach at, we've got a prep hockey and a prep basketball team. And a lot of times their parents won't even let them come out even to try rugby, let alone play a game. How would you guys convince those parents that, it's worth a go? Like, or is it not? Like, what are your thoughts there?
For me, the biggest thing I always saw when I grew up playing in Canada was the fact that people started later. So your education around it, you look at hockey, you guys start playing, when did you start playing, Beuks? 5?
Oh, so, yeah. As soon as you can walk into Canada, they slap a pair of skates on you.
Exactly. And you don't hit, you don't legally hit whatever when you're young. So the earlier you get into rugby, it's built progressively. So when you get to a point where the contact and everything is up to the level and speed it should be, you understand how to take contact, you understand how to fall, you understand how to tackle properly. And the problem I always saw was guys that came in who had never played before, tackling upright, running, not expecting where contact's coming from, things like that, which lead to, injury. But no more so than, doing, if I went and played hockey next week, or when I was 18, if I tried to go out and play, I would have been in all sorts of bits probably, because I just didn't know how my body was supposed to go and what I was supposed to do in situations, because it's not built up in me. Whereas if we get these guys and girls into it earlier, then you understand it, your body feels it. It's all part of that body and mind linking up. So I'd say to any parents is that, get them involved early. They got a way less likelihood of picking up anything that's unnecessary,
That's fair.
Yeah, I agree. I started doing rugby when I started late in Australia at 10 years old, and it's full contact, lifting and lineouts. The scrum, you could only push like 1.5 meters or something, but you had 8 on 8 scrums.
At 10 years old, they were teaching how to tackle and lift and lineouts and stuff?
Well, they'd already been doing it. So I was late to the party at 10 years old. I was a reasonable football player before that, and so I came late to the party. But yeah, I think that it's actually, yeah, like you say, the younger you start, the better, because you're not strong and you're not fast when you're a kid, and you're made of rubber, and you learn these things with less impact. And I'd say, like, you see injuries in the professional game, and there's a lot talked of, like, sort of written and spoken about that, but that's a whole nother story. Is like the size and power of the players these days is like they're heavier and faster and stronger than they've ever been before. And that's kind of where the injuries are. It's at the top end of the game. Like, very rarely do you see like a real injury in a kid's game, or even in like a high school game. But I used to go back and watch my high school play. There's not really many injuries because they're not that big, they're not that heavy, and it's not giant humans running really fast into each other full speed. Like, so I think, like Mev says, just as much as any other sport, really. And it's really fun. You get to beat people up and then have beer with them after, or, when you're a kid, not a beer, but a Coke.
Yeah, that's good. Brett, what about you?
Yeah, I think Evan and Matt, brought up some great points. And what I would say is coaches in rugby and the way rugby's taught as you're growing up, they're taught a lot of these physical contact skills. So you're taught to do it safely. You're taught to tackle safely, and all the appropriate stuff to mitigate as many injuries as possible. And then what I would also tell parents is there's not too many other team sports that have that unity and teach as much outside of the game as rugby does. Rugby it's ultimate team sport, and if you want your kid to learn valuable life lessons, I think it's important they pursue rugby or play a bit of rugby, because it teaches so many valuable lessons that you can take on later in life.
That's good. That kind of leads into the next question. Just a follow up. A buddy of mine, he's the athletic therapist at our school, and I'm teaching his kid grade 10 this year. And his kid's a good athlete, really nice kid, but his dad won't let him play. And I said, why not? You like rugby? He goes, I do like rugby, but just not at the high school level. If he wants to play when he gets to university, I'm fine with that. His argument is that he's seen too many games, in New Brunswick at least, where the coaches don't teach properly. And I think that really sours a lot of people. If the coaches aren't trained properly, or if they ain't if they're not put through their paces properly in order to teach 15-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 17-year-olds, proper tackling, proper, falling with the ball, et cetera, like that. So in the East Coast, at least, it might be a little harder, but we are doing rookie rugby programs here, try and get kids invested early and parents invested early as well. So last question, and Brett, you were kind of answering this one already, but for you three, what makes rugby different from other sports? Like, what's a selling feature? What, if you're going to sell rugby to somebody, what would you say?
I guess I'll carry on a bit as to what I was saying before. It's ultimate team sport, and to sell it to Canadian parents and sell it to Canadians, I think rugby, it opens up, it lets you see the world. There's a lot of rugby tours associated with high school club teams here. It takes you to spots where you wouldn't regularly visit. It takes and it gives you all these different cultural experiences, and it's a great avenue just to learn important life lessons.
Yeah, I echo that in a way. It's just that instant camaraderie. You could go, it's like, even if you're no good, right? Even if you just wanted to show up and play third division stuff on a Sunday and have some fun, you can move anywhere in the world pretty much within reason. I understand anybody who wants to be funny and start digging out the map and stuff, but you could pretty much go anywhere where rugby's a thing, and you could make 30 to 40 friends instantly by showing up on a Thursday night and having a run around. You're accepted. People treat people in a way that is unjudgmental and very, I've never been to a rugby club where you aren't welcomed until people step over the line and do something wrong. Obviously the community calls you out that way too. It's just rugby's based on respect, and that's on and off the field, which is a huge platform of why it breeds so many good people. And you look at rugby, the modern era of rugby, which encompasses everybody. You know, look how strong the women's game's getting now. Look how strong just general nations are becoming. You know, you look at your Spain and your Portugal's, Uruguay, all these South American countries that are thriving, they're building communities from, you hear these stories of guys who have absolutely nothing, and then they form a team and get together, and they have built a nation that has just adopted this sport because it's so caring about everybody. So for me, I think if you're not going to get anywhere in it, if you want to look at it from a professional and international level, what it's going to give back to you by just opening yourself up to be a part of that could be hugely beneficial, like Beuks said, about traveling the world even.
Good points.
Yeah. That's and since those guys have, I agree completely with what those 2 points are. So I'll go a little slightly different approach. Like the question is like why you should play rugby, is it? That's what we're looking at. So I'd say like from a professional perspective, it's a lot easier, I would say, to become a professional rugby player than it is, say, to become like a professional football player or an ice hockey player, just because I think there's more X factor sort of that goes into it. If you catch my meaning, it's not as much of a straight, clear cut. You have to run this speed, lift this weight, be able to do this on a test score, and that makes you a professional like there would be in some of the American sports. It's more like up to your sort of creativity and your thing. And football would be similar, but there's obviously the salary is so high that every single person in the entire world would, you know, sell their grandmother to become a professional footballer in England. But, you know, you can get a pretty reasonable job, you know, playing professional rugby in Romania, Spain, France, England, America and Canada now. The South Americans, they've got a league. So if you want to make a job of it, that's probably the sport to go for if you're sort of reasonably talented at many things. Unless you're the best hockey player in your whole area, you're probably not going to make it. Unless you're the best football player. If you're Australian, you've got to be the best football player in Australia to get a, you know, contract in the English Premier League or something like that. Whereas with rugby, I think it just gives you more chances because, like I say, it is so global and it does have those values. And the other thing that I think really sets it apart is diving hasn't really made it into rugby yet. It's sort of creeping in there a little bit, but that's another reason why you should play rugby, because you don't have too many people faking injuries, and that just absolutely kills me about a lot of other sports, people pretending they're injured all the time.
I agree. I agree too that it seems to not slowly be creeping in, but maybe sometimes a little lack of respect towards ref is starting to fade a little bit like that. But I agree it's
definitely creeping in. Like the diving thing, like in France, you see it every now and then, and it just grinds your gears. But that's because there's too much football here. But yeah, it is like, yeah, the respect of the ref, the respect of each other. I think these are all like really important values that rugby teaches that a lot of other sports have lost, or maybe this never had to begin with.
That's fair. Good points. All right, guys, listen, I don't want to take up any more of your time. Evan, I know you got supper getting ready there, and Brett's got your firefighting training, and Matt, you might have to go for another walk. I'm not really sure. Probably have to do some more of that 10K run, but really, guys, really appreciate you taking the time here. Just thanks very much. I really appreciate it. Oh, that was good. Lots of great stories and laughs of the boys. I love the quick fire section when we have, it's one of my favorite sections anyway, but when we have 3 or 4 on there and they can kind of banter back and forth at each other, it's always good. Olmstead got picked on a lot there, but all in good fun. Thanks very much for that, boys. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us. Coming up soon, as I said, we've got Matt Tierney. He's going to be our next guest, so his pod will be dropping next weekend. Matt Evans, as I said, he and I are chatting this weekend, so his pod will be ready in a couple of weeks. Tom Woods and I are still trying to nail down a date. Alicia Allaire, as you know, she's over in Dubai with the Canada Sevens, so I'm just kind of waiting for her to get back on Canadian soil. And then also we've got the Women's 2014 Rugby World Cup Roundtable. That one's going to be fun. We've got 3 or 4 women lined up to go on there. And as I've mentioned in the past, my goal is to try and highlight players from each World Cup on the men's and women's side and do a bit of a discussion about those specific tournaments. That'll be a lot of fun. And then local legends, we have another local legend series lined up. We're going to look in the Oakville Crusaders out of Oakville, Ontario. So we're just we're lining up some dates to get that conversation underway as well. And lastly, you all know I really appreciate that you take the time to either watch this podcast or you listen to it. but I appreciate it more when you spread the word. You know, who all wants to hear these stories from these great guys. Like if you enjoy listening to Evan, Brett, and Matt, you know, Beuks and Mevs and Evan, like just make sure that you share it. Send it to a buddy that's on his way to work, or make sure it gets shared around on your social media so that other people get a chance to listen to what these guys are saying and learn a little bit about Canadian rugby and what it takes to be a Canadian rugger. As always, got to thank my son Rylan for supplying us with our music. And as always feel free to request topics for future podcasts. It's always great when I hear from people that say they want to hear a question, or they want to talk to a specific guest. Anyway, that's it for me. So this is Jamie, and until next time, I want you to stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane, and most importantly, keep on rucking.